Okay, I think we're good.
Okay. Well, we're calling our June 29th special Zoom board meeting to order. And we do have a quorum with all board members present. Let's stand for the pledge. Rudy, you got a flag? I got one. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's it on Zoom. Okay, item 1.04, do we have a motion to amend or adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I second.
Kelly, do we need to say who's doing a motion and who's seconding? I don't know, maybe we should.
Okay.
Malone?
Yeah. Yes, if you don't mind.
Okay,
Zaire second.
okay.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're ready for item 1.05, the 2020 and 21 outstanding bills. Charles, is there anything you need to add?
No, ma'am, just the reminder that this is the reason we're having this meeting is our new auditors at Fick, Eggemeyer and Williamson suggested that it was best practice to not carry over our bills from the current fiscal year into the next before you as a board release them. And so last year was the first time we did this with an end of year meeting, but this is so you have the June bill. So at the July meeting, when you have a much smaller list, that's why.
Anyone have any thoughts or comments, questions? Then do I have a motion to approve the outstanding bills?
Move that we approve the outstanding bills. Malone?
I second Sigma.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. Item 1.06, our district financial report. Do you still want the drum roll?
Yeah, it's not at the very end of the meeting
I know.
tonight, so I don't know that I need a drum roll, Donna.
Not as
Thank you.
dramatic.
So I hope that you can see the all the reports that Lavinia completed and uploaded for you. Just a couple of comments that I wanted to make. The healthcare fund looks like we dropped by $800,000. We actually only dropped by about 150, which is not an unusual fluctuation. If you look at the premiums for health, we didn't pay ourselves during May. That was just a delay of when that got posted. So we'll catch back up next month, but there's no cause for concern with that drop. It's just a function of when we paid ourselves for those premiums from the operating fund into the health insurance fund. As far as month end and year end overall, there's nothing really outstanding there. We have virtually all of our local revenue and then no county revenue to collect. And then state revenue will trickle in just a little bit. You'll see next month in the final reports in the June financial reports, and then a little bit more federal revenue. But we're pretty well done on the revenue side of things. On the expenditure side, we did run the usual double payroll in June. Just a reminder for you as the board, all of our 10-month employees, we began paying them in August and finish paying them in June. And so in June, they get 2 checks, or actually 4. So for the 2 payrolls in June, the 2 payrolls in July. So we have a double June payroll and then a very light July payroll. But those are the only big outstanding items that I would point out to you. And then our estimated balance in funds 1 and 2 still is riding at about 22.5%. I actually think that's going to go up a little bit. We got a payment on a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes from the city of St. Peters. If you remember, board, the city of St. Peter's actually controls that Premier 370 park out along our northwest boundary. And so as they have filled that area, we have missed out on a lot of the added revenues there because they've used either TIF or Chapter 100 to allow new distribution centers to move in, like our big Amazon warehouse, without them taking on the tax liability. And so this was an agreed upon payment in lieu of taxes that we did receive. And so that actually, I think, will mean between that additional payment and then the state releasing the previously withheld state revenues that the governor had withheld this time last year, I think we will go up just a little bit there. So we're actually in honestly much better financial position now than I really thought we might be. This has just been the craziest year as far as what we thought would happen versus what has versus what we had no idea was coming down the pike. But all in all, we've made it through very well. So that's really the only comments I would make on the financial report, unless you've got questions.
Anyone have any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the financial report?
I'll make the motion to approve the financial report. This is Gibson.
I'll second Zaire.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Well, we're ready for item 1.07, that budget adoption for the fiscal year 21-22.
Right. So as all of you are probably aware, I know, Heidi, you haven't gone through this process before, but we are required to have by state statute a budget in place by the beginning of each fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends tomorrow on 6/30. So 7/1 is New Year's, and the business office always goes out and celebrates with a Happy New Year's lunch because it's much more important than that arbitrary date we give ourselves in January. This one actually means something to us. So what you have presented there is not the really nice, easy to flip through and understand budget book that we will compile over the next month or so, but you have a listing of requested expenditures, requested revenues. And so Ellen asked a really good question that I hadn't thought about explaining. She said, what does requested mean? And that's really on the revenue side. Those are just our projections of what revenues we will receive. And then on the expenditure side, it's our best projections based on staffing and then requests from buildings and departments on what we'll spend. So if you look at that, it looks like we're going to run a gigantic surplus. But that's because on Thursday of this week, we will sell our $50 million bond issue. And then we have only projected in the budget to spend somewhere around 16 million of it this fiscal year, between what we've already committed to and the projects going on right now and what potentially could start during this fiscal year. So that's just a guess. I actually think now it'll probably be a little less than that, because we actually delayed one of our first big projects by about 6 months, and that's the remodel at Monroe Elementary. And we did that really after talking with our engineers and architects based on the global construction market and the cost of building supplies right now. We've seen a kind of a good correction back towards normal in the lumber market, but steel, masonry, all of those types of things are still really, really high, just because of the shutdown at so many processing plants where they were taking raw materials, making them into those building materials that lost time and effort during the pandemic. And so we really feel like delaying 6 months or so will not hurt us as a district very much as compared to bidding the project and then paying a premium to do it a little earlier. So I think that 16 million that I've got on the expenditure side is probably a little high. We'll see. But as you know, those of you who have been at this a few years, our budget's really just a forward-looking forecast of what we think is going to happen. And then other than July, every month of the year, we come back and adjust that budget based on new information. So for instance, one of the pieces that you'll see come in and add on both sides of the ledger later in the year is when we begin spending ESSER 2 funds, which is about that $3 million that was approved and allocated to school districts, and that you got a little bit of a preview from Dr. Seifert and Dr. Tormala last month. So that's not shown on the budget, but that'll be dollars in, dollars out that will be equal. The only major thing that I want to point out to you is we are projecting with the best information we have right now about a 2% operating deficit. So almost every year that I've been your assistant superintendent, we've projected about a 1%. And I'm pretty confident in a 1% deficit actually working out to be pretty budget neutral, because we have, for instance, we might, a building might have $50,000 in a supply account. Well, they rarely spend it actually down to zero. They might leave $500 or $1,000 or something in that account at the end of a school year. And the same with accounts like for utilities or insurance or other areas. We try and estimate high, and then if everything comes in, we generally have 1% of our operating budget left over. So what I'm telling you, I guess, in short, is I think this really is a slight budget deficit, and that we'll monitor that as we go. I'm not overly concerned with that because our overall balances, as I said, I think are going to tick up a little bit. But obviously, that's not a trend you want to continue on a long-term historical basis. So we will have to watch things and see where we go. As long as the St. Charles County economy continues to fire strongly like it is right now, that's our best hedge against having to, come back and consider, making cuts in programs or services to close that gap. But for the foreseeable future, I don't think that we're in a position where we need to be overly concerned with that. If we see our end of year budget balances going forward dropping to 20% or less, then we need to start having some real discussions about where we go. But as far as the moment, I'd say we're in good shape with that 1% deficit. That's about $800,000 rather, that we're projecting that we're over committed on revenue, on expenditures versus the revenue side. That very well could change as we firm up figures from the county and the state, and we see exactly where we think we'll land on funding. It also changes on the expenditure side if we don't spend in particular areas that are projected right now to spend. Are there any questions that I might be able to answer in general or specifically about the budget?
Yeah. I have a question. Well, it's not a question. I realize, first of all, that I don't have to deal in my personal life, although I would like to, with an $89 million budget, So in that regard, I don't understand having so much money to deal with. But it seems to me that from looking at it from a citizen's perspective, I would feel comfortable knowing that somehow we have built in some kind of self-check, that we take a program every year and really audit it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Yeah. And because then I would feel that even in good times, that we are being fiscally responsible. And I know I bring this up in some shape or form every year at this time.
Sure. So, and I know, Marita, you've talked a lot in years past about program reviews. And so auditing in that respect as well. What are we getting for the dollars that we spend? Are we seeing a move in student achievement or whatever the purpose of the spending is? And so I would just say to that, on the financial side of things, that we do occasional spot checks on things like an auditor might. But that's not, I think, what you're saying. You're saying look at it from top to bottom, and is the spending acceptable for the intended purpose? And so I think we do try and do that on a kind of rolling basis, but we do not have, to your point, a specific set of guidelines that say, okay, this year we're going to look at transportation, or this year we're going to look at elementary instruction or some other area. We do look at those things during the year, and certainly as a central office team, we talk about needs and the effectiveness and whether our funds match what our student needs are. So we really do try and keep that in process, and then we rely on outside agencies. So DESE does audit programs that they have particular interest in, food service and vocational programs. Our independent auditors that we just referenced earlier, they always do tests and do a particular deep dive into our federal programs of money. Anybody who's receiving more than $500,000 in federal money, and we're obviously well above that level, qualifies for a what's called a federal single audit. And so every year they look at a revolving set of federal programs, either our title programs, special education, or title or food service. And so we do take all of that information into account when we put the budget together. So there are various ways that you can look at budgeting. One is to say you should just start with a zero budget and say every year, if you're the principal at the junior high school, then that you have to justify every expense. I have not ever taken that tact. I think it's valuable at times to say, let's break this program all the way back down to zero. For instance, some of the work that Dr. Seifert has been leading related to our alternative education program has taken that kind of a dive. It's like, what money, what staff, what programming are we putting into alternative education? But year over year, usually what we do is start with staffing, because that's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And Rodney, of course, leads that effort along with Julie from a special education perspective. They talk with principals about numbers of students, what programs are changing, what are growing or reducing. And all of my central office colleagues can tell you, I bang that drum all the time when we start saying, well, we might need to add this or that. It's like, well, what are we subtracting? Because we haven't grown in students. Our only growth has been in early childhood, and that's wonderful. But that doesn't balance out that we're still pretty stagnant in K-12. So that is something that is a point well taken.
Well,
Yeah.
if I'm here next year, I will ask the same question.
Yeah.
Next year, I'll answer it again.
I don't know if that was an answer to the question. So is that a yes, we can do an audit on an individual program, or?
So what I'm saying, I think, is, Leslie, we do kind of do a constant rolling review of things as we go through a budget year and see what people are spending. So for instance, from my office, just from a financial standpoint, we look at, okay, are they spending more or less than they've budgeted? Why is that difference occurring? Rodney looks at it from, okay, are we efficiently using the staff that we have in those programs? So we are doing that in terms of review. But if you're saying, do we have the manpower or the time to put into, let's tear down a certain set of programs every single year and take a deeper dive, I think it would be foolhardy of me to say that we could do much more than we're doing right now.
That's fine. I just didn't understand the answer.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Charles? All right, we need a motion to adopt the budget for the fiscal year 21-22.
I move that we approve the budget for fiscal year 21-22 as presented.
And a second?
Malone?
Oh, yeah. Second?
I second Sigma.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you very much.
We're ready to have a motion to recess to our closed session. Do we have a motion?
I move we adjourn to closed session.
And a second?
Second, Malone.
Need a roll call vote?
Gibson,
Aye.
Towers,
Aye.
Sigma. Sigma.
Oh, she's frozen, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's a yes.
Malone,
Yes.
Knight,
Aye.
Thorne.
Aye.
And Zaire.
Aye.
Right. We are in recess and then we'll listen for our okey dokey.